Welcome to our Get to Know Your CEO with me, Terrel Bundy, and our CEO, Dr. Tennant. This is our first ever segment doing this, and we're just going to ask a couple questions and get on the road. So how have you been handling this COVID-19 quarantine?
Well, Mr. Bundy, first let me say thank you for having me on, and thank you for taking the time to inquire about how I'm doing. It is good to connect with you, and I guess in some how am I doing? I'm missing our Boys Latin Warriors. I'm missing seeing the members of our community, the Boys Latin family, our faculty, our staff. But I am happy and excited to find new ways to connect with folks such as this and being a part of this conversation with you. I am doing well. My family's doing well. We're healthy. We're safe. We're saying prayers and sending love to those who are more impacted by it, and just hoping that we collectively as a community can make sure we make the right decisions, the smart decisions to stay safe.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm. So here's some questions that people have been asking. How has COVID-19 affected the learning process?
So we at Boys Latin had to make a very swift change in terms of what learning looked like from the educator's point of view, and certainly from the student point of view, and from the parent point of view as well. So for us, we transitioned in a very short amount of time to a distance learning method, excuse me, to some distance learning protocols that take into account this new reality and this new norm that we're living in. So for us, when we made that transition, we had three key goals in mind. Our number one goal there was that we wanted to do everything we could to maintain as many connections with our students, between our students and our faculty members, making sure we didn't lose completely the sense of community that's so important to us. The number two thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we could prevent any backslide, any regression. Typically, over the summer months, students all over the world, all over the country, they lose some of the learning that they were able to gain during the school year, because summer is a time where they're just not as actively engaged in learning processes. So they lose a lot of that in the summer. We wanted to make sure, as our second priority, that our students didn't have even more of a backslide, more regression during these spring months when we were out of school, which is why it was so important to stay connected with them. And then lastly, the third part of it is, how can we still use this time to make sure we're giving the young men of Boys Latin what they deserve in terms of a rigorous education? So our transition was with those things in mind. And that's how we identified the different learning protocols with regards to the Google Classrooms, the check-ins with students, the office hours, and so forth.
All right. What are some hard?
You let me know if I'm talking too much, okay?
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. This is
all
good. Right. What are some hardships or hurdles that the Boys Latin administration faced during this distance learning?
Sure. I want to make sure you said that the Boys Latin what faces?
Administration.
So I would say the biggest hardship that we face is being, not just administration, but all of our faculty and staff members, is being physically separated from our students. You know, there is so much to teaching and learning that, quite frankly, doesn't have everything to do with what the curriculum looks like. It doesn't have everything to do with certain teaching strategies or approaches. It's really just about being together, checking in on one another, making sure people are okay, kneeling down next to someone to check in and see how they're doing, reading an expression on their face to get a sense of whether or not they're going through a hardship or things are good, and being able to adjust accordingly. So a big hardship for us is making sure that we can still find a way to take care of our students. I'm going to take care of one another, even though we're apart. It's really important because, you know, our school was set up to counter, you know, some of the historical underserving of students in the city of Philadelphia. You know, we want to make sure our school was built on this concept that students typically have not been served well, particularly boys of color have not been served well in the city of Philadelphia. And so we wanted to create a place where they could come to school, be put on a pathway toward college, be given the challenge they deserve, the high expectations they deserve, the support they deserve. And so when all of a sudden we're sort of separated from one another, it makes that charge more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult.
All right. How hard has it been to stay on schedule and top of your work stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mentioned in an earlier response that, this is impacting students, it's impacting faculty and staff members, and it's also impacting parents. And so for me personally, I have the blessing to be able to work with my own 3 children, the Tennant children, in my house, while I'm also trying to do boys Latin stuff. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle every day. What has helped me was, as you alluded to in your question, coming up with a schedule that works. So getting up before the rest of them get up to handle some of the odds and ends that I want to handle with regards to boys Latin work. Once they're up, sitting down with them for breakfast, getting them started on their work, hopefully pretty early in the day, and then being able to take another few hours for boys Latin work. Again, that schedule is really important. And part of that schedule, Terrell, is also, some of it has nothing to do with boys Latin work. Some of it has nothing to do with my own children's work, but it very much does impact both of those things. And that is more specifically scheduling time to try to take care of myself. That self-care is really important, whether that is taking a walk around the block with my wife just to sort of catch up and exhale. All of that impacts everything else that we do, that sort of emotional, mental health piece of it, and considering that and how it's going to have implications for all the other work we do.
Has it been more of a disadvantage or an advantage with the distance learning?
Is it a disadvantage or an advantage? So it's a great question. There are hardships that are inherent in this distance learning piece, right? And there are things we miss, which I've talked about already. So in that sense, as we go into this, we're disadvantaged because we can't all be together. We can't all be in the same place at once. However, it's really important whenever there are challenges, whenever there are crises, whenever there are moments that are difficult, if you look closely enough, you can find some opportunities for growth and you can find some opportunities for change. And so one of the things that we're really trying to think of is how can we grow from this and what advantages can we draw from the experience? So, we went from a school where very few people had experience with distance learning, and now we're a school where for about 5 weeks, we're developing and cultivating expert students with distance learning and expert educators with distance learning. And so the next challenge will be, as we move forward as an organization, how can we leverage that growing understanding? What will school look like in 2021? What will it look like in the years beyond that, where we can take this learning and perhaps combine it somehow with some of the things we already did really well to make an even more rich boys Latin experience. So definitely there are some advantages and disadvantages.
Mm-hmm. Why did you pick Google Classroom for the best way for us to learn?
Sure. All of these decisions are born from bringing together some of the people who are part of our team. So Principal Allen, for instance, connecting with some of the faculty members at the school, connecting with leaders from the high school as well. And when we came together to try to figure out the best platform to use, we really ended up choosing Google Classroom because it was a platform that was most familiar with the most amount of people. It was something that was easily accessible to us, something that we thought was an efficient way to move forward. We believed even many of our students had some experience with Google Classroom. However, going back to your other question about advantages and disadvantages, one of the things that we really want to think about is, hey, if we want to leverage this experience to future growth and future learning as an organization, we should think about whether or not there are or are not better platforms that we might want to consider. When you look at what colleges and universities are doing with other platforms like Schoology and Canvas, there are definitely things, Google Classroom, again, very efficient for us, accessible for us, but there are some programs that are made completely for this distance learning sort of initiative. And so for us, it's definitely worth exploring other platforms for the future, but Google Classroom was chosen in the midst of this quick transition because of ease of use and accessibility.
Do you think that you'll ever go back to something like this, even if there's not even a crisis like this?
I think that we will absolutely take the learning from this and apply it to what we do in the future. So, let's assume that in the year ahead we get to a point where we're all back in the building at 344 Felton, and we're all back in those classrooms learning together. What we need to think about is, hey, this is great here, but why not create an opportunity for students to do an online course as well as part of the curriculum at the middle school? So I think that the learning that we have here is going to be something that is going to help us evolve as an organization.
All right. And lastly, how do you feel like what will be the outcome of this whole quarantine?
I think the outcome of this quarantine is that we are going to come to a greater understanding and realization of all the things we have that we can and should appreciate. One of the beautiful, it's a little bit heartbreaking too, but one of the beautiful outcomes of this is hearing from students who will openly express how much they miss school and how much they miss their teachers. And that's beautiful to hear. That means that it's not a surprise to me, but it's still beautiful to hear because it's evidence of the fact that there are relationships between our students and our faculty and staff members that that are important, that are life building, that are edifying. And so I think that this is going to prompt us to have a greater appreciation for the community that we build in our school, the community that our students bring, community that our teachers bring, community that the administrators bring to Boys Latin.
All right. I just want to say thank you for doing this. It's been fun. I definitely really had fun talking and getting information about this stuff. Yeah, it was an honor. It was really fun doing this. Hopefully we could do this again, or something similar like this.
Terrell, the pleasure was mine. Thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for having me on. Boys Latin Warriors, we love you. We're thinking about you. You're on our mind. You're making us proud. Keep working hard. Keep being warriors. Thank you very much, Mr. Bundy.
You're welcome. Thank you.